Imagine a pitch-black night, when darkness falls like a suffocating blanket over Los Angeles, the dazzling heart of American entertainment in the 1980s. The streets, once shimmering with laughter and neon lights, now sink into a deadly silence, with only the howling wind whispering like the voice of death. Your family sleeps soundly, their steady breaths filling the warm house, but then, a faint noise tears through the stillness. The door creaks softly, unfamiliar footsteps glide across the wooden floor. Something has slipped inside, and you have no idea. That night, you could be the next victim. California, the land of dreams and lights, has become the arena of nightmares. Every night, people kneel by their beds, their trembling lips whispering prayers, not for blessings, but for survival. No one knows who the predator in the darkness will choose next. He comes without warning, without screams, without reason, only blood-stained walls and eerie pentagrams carved deep into the plaster, marks of Satan from the depths of hell. A cold-blooded killer, with eyes burning with devotion to darkness, has turned peaceful homes into slaughterhouses. On March 17, 1985, the nightmare officially began. Dale Okazaki, 34, was standing in her kitchen when a bullet tore through her skull, splattering blood across the wall. She collapsed, her hands still gripping the counter as if trying to hold onto the life slipping away. Not far from her, Maria Hernandez miraculously survived when a bullet ricocheted off the keychain in her hand. But the gaunt, towering silhouette of the murderer was seared into her memory in the flickering darkness. That same night, an Asian woman, was dragged out of her car and shot through the chest, her body collapsing onto the cold pavement next to a desperate message scrawled in dried blood. The Los Angeles police, despite ramping up patrols and forming a special task force with FBI support, were powerless against this invisible predator. He left no pattern, no clues. His victims could be anyone, the elderly, children, men, or women. Fear gripped the city like an iron fist. People rushed to buy guns, reinforced their doors, installed alarm systems, but the terror gnawed at their souls. Every creak in the night was a phantom blade stabbing into their chests, every shadow outside their window a chilling reminder he was out there, watching, waiting. They called him the Night Stalker, a name that sent shivers down California's spine. No one knew who he was, only that when the night fell, he rose, his blood-stained hands ready to steal another life to feed his twisted desires. For 167 long days, Detective Gil Carrillo and his team waded through despair, their desks buried under files like silent graves. Every new crime scene was another cruel blow to their hopes, as blood continued to flow and pentagrams kept appearing, mocking them, as if the killer himself was laughing at a world too afraid to stop him. The darkness of Los Angeles was no longer a safe refuge, it had become the hunting ground of the Night Stalker. Richard Ramirez, a demon in human form, slipped through open windows, his obvious sneakers leaving silent imprints on the soft earth, leading him to his unsuspecting prey. He didn't just kill, he orchestrated terror, each stab, each bullet a twisted symphony of hell composed by his own hands. Night after night, rivers of blood flowed, and the muffled cries of survivors blended with the grotesque laughter echoing inside his deranged mind. Ramirez's rampage was a never-ending nightmare. An elderly couple dozing on their sofa was startled awake by a bullet piercing through their skulls, their white cushions now drenched in crimson. The wife, left behind, was raped, her body shredded by his blade, and the last thing that dared to look him in the eye, her own eyes, were gouged out, taken as trophies. Elsewhere, Anastasia, a sleepy 6-year-old girl, was dragged from her bed and stuffed into a rough burlap sack, her faint pleas for help swallowed by the night as he satisfied his sick desires, Madonna's upbeat music playing in the background. He later dumped her at a gas station, a twisted smirk on his lips, "Now you know where I keep my gun." No one understood why he spared some, but survival only meant living with an inescapable horror. As time went on, Ramirez pushed the limits of brutality. A 75-year-old woman, living alone, had her throat slit until her blood ran dry, her corpse left adrift in the cold emptiness of her home. A 16-year-old girl had her skull crushed with a tire iron, her young body slashed 107 times, each wound a testament to his boundless savagery. He ransacked homes, stole jewelry, casually ate meals at crime scenes as if death was merely an appetizer for his insatiable hunger. Each victim was another piece in his grotesque puzzle, a canvas for his macabre art, where lipstick-drawn pentagrams on the walls or carved into flesh became his unerasable signature. Despite exhaustion, detectives finally found a crack in the chaos. A rare obvious sneaker print reappeared like a whisper from the killer himself, "I'm here, but you'll never catch me." The survivors painted a haunting portrait of their tormentor, a gaunt, tall man with pale skin, curly hair, gapped and rotting teeth, and breath reeking of decay, a phantom walking among the living, unnoticed. But it wasn't enough. He was as elusive as smoke, vanishing after every attack, leaving behind only Detective Gil Carrillo and his team drowning in despair, grasping at empty leads buried beneath mountains of unsolved case files. The media roared, each headline hammering fear into California's heart. "He's out there, and you could be next," the news screamed, sending shivers through the city. The people no longer waited for the police, they armed themselves, turned their homes into fortresses, but fear still crept through every crack, seeping into every restless sleep. Ramirez knew this, and he reveled in it. Every pentagram he left behind wasn't just a mark of Satan, it was a mocking challenge to the world. "I am the nightmare you will never wake up from." And under the dim lights of Los Angeles, his gaunt silhouette drifted through the streets, his cold, predatory gaze already searching for the next victim to feed the insatiable bloodlust that would never end. Night in Los Angeles was no longer just darkness, it was the very breath of Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, the man who turned the city of angels into a living graveyard. But the phantom could not remain undefeated forever. On the 166th day, as Gil Carrillo walked into his office, dark circles under his eyes from countless sleepless nights, a flicker of hope emerged from the ashes of countless cases. The San Francisco police sent a name, Richard Ramirez. A fingerprint lifted from an abandoned Toyota, its windshield carved with a pentagram, matched the records of a known thief. The gaunt figure, gapped teeth, putrid stench, everything was becoming clearer. He was no longer just an invisible nightmare. The hunt turned on its hunter. The police plastered his face across every news channel and newspaper, making him the prey. Arriving back in Los Angeles from Arizona on a Greyhound bus, Ramirez stepped off at the station, an icy instinct creeping down his spine. The so-called homeless men around him, too clean, teeth too white, didn't fool him. He slipped through the back exit, blending into the crowd, but the face on every TV and front page had already betrayed him. "That's him." A voice shattered the air, and suddenly, chaos. Ramirez bolted, darting across the highway, trying to hijack a car, wrestling with civilians, but with every desperate step, fate slashed at his luck. On the 167th day, he collapsed beneath the fists of enraged citizens and the grip of the law, bloodied and beaten, yet his eyes still burned with defiance. The crowd swarmed the police car, howling for vengeance, demanding his blood. Cuffed and cornered, Ramirez turned to a nearby officer, his twisted smile stretched across broken lips. "I'll be back to snap all your necks." But the threat was nothing more than the final snarl of a beast with nowhere left to run. The trial of 1989 captivated the entire nation. 140 witnesses, shaking survivors reliving their trauma, investigators detailing blood-drenched crime scenes, all came together to paint the portrait of a true monster. But Ramirez showed no remorse. Instead, he lifted his tattooed hand, flashing a pentagram, and smirked, "See you in Disneyland." The verdict? 13 death sentences. But fate had its own punishment in store. B-cell lymphoma claimed his life in 2013, leaving him to rot in the cold, gray isolation of prison. What created this monster? Ramirez's childhood was a black hole of violence. He watched his cousin shoot his wife in the face, brag about raping and mutilating women during the war, and teach him how to kill like it was a game. Raised under the iron fist of an abusive father, Ramirez spiraled into drugs, clinging to Satanism, a twisted faith soaked in blood and depravity. He dropped out of school, drifted to California, and the slaughter began. He hated the way victims looked at him. He loved their screams, their pleas, the moment terror overtook them before death. He dragged them from their cars, forced them to stare him in the eye before gouging them out, so no one would dare challenge him again, each murder a ritual in his worship of darkness. When Ramirez finally fell, California breathed again, but the fear never truly left. At last, he's caught, people whispered, but their hands still clutched the guns beneath their pillows. Los Angeles returned to the light, but the pentagrams, the screams in the night, the silhouette of the Night Stalker, these remained etched into the city's soul. A chilling reminder that evil once walked among them, and somewhere, it may still be watching.